It seems my dear husband has changed somehow. He told me, I'm giving this house to Olivia. If you don't agree, we might need to consider divorce. I was stunned. Why would he give away the house that I bought and lovingly maintained in my name to our eldest son's wife, Olivia? Maybe you should start looking for a new place soon, he said. It was clear he had a lot of trust in Olivia. With the house in my name and the $1,200 mortgage, I could manage. My eldest son seemed to think the same way. Honestly, I'm not that attached to this old house. All right, I'll move out, I said, but be prepared for the challenges you three might face in the future. I'm Kate, 50 years old, with a solid position at a major company. I live a relaxed life with my husband Paul, who is 2 years younger than me. Last year, we decided to renovate our slightly outdated house, which my father had built. We hoped the renovations would set us up nicely for retirement. The mortgage is $3,000 a month, which I can handle comfortably with my salary. Paul, who manages a small restaurant, earns less, so it seemed practical to put the mortgage in my name. He once mentioned that covering the mortgage payments with just my income might be tough, but we managed. This house was originally your father's and is now in your name, Paul had said. Can you handle the full payments? I'll cover our living expenses. After the renovations, the house looked fantastic, and we were thrilled about our refreshed home and the future ahead. But then, things took an unexpected turn. One day, my phone buzzed with a surprising message from our eldest son, David. I'm thinking of getting married, he said. At 31, David had always been dedicated to his work and had never mentioned a girlfriend before. I wondered about her and what kind of person she might be. If David liked her, she must be wonderful, but I couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and concern. When we finally met Olivia, she had long hair and a lovely personality. She greeted us warmly. Hello, I'm Olivia, she said, her smile radiating like summer sunshine. I thought to myself, she's too wonderful to be with David. Paul was equally impressed. She's incredible, really charming, Paul murmured. Olivia, sensing his praise, hugged him and said, I'm so glad you said that. I hope we can get even closer from now on. Her behavior surprised me, and even David seemed taken aback. Paul looked slightly embarrassed. I'm sorry if I was too forward, Olivia said with a smile, stepping back. I sometimes get close to people without realizing it. My friends always point it out, and though I try to be mindful, she laughed apologetically. Her initial behavior was surprising, but seeing the way David's eyes lit up when he spoke of her made it clear how much he loved her. Olivia isn't great with personal space, but that's part of her charm, David explained. She naturally brings people close, making even someone as shy as me enjoy the conversation. Despite the initial shock, I felt she would be a warm and loving daughter-in-law. Time passed, and Olivia and David prepared for marriage, eventually registering their union. It warmed my heart to think about their future together. Then, shortly after their wedding, I came home to find unfamiliar women's shoes at the entrance. Inside, I saw Paul and Olivia together. Olivia greeted me with a smile. Welcome home, Kate. The living room was cluttered with empty cans and bottles. What's going on here? I asked, taken aback. Olivia explained, we bumped into each other on the way home and decided to have a drink together to strengthen our bond. With the finances tight this month, we thought it would be better to drink here rather than go out. I was surprised to see them drinking alone at home. I didn't want to intrude on their newlywed time, but I wondered why they hadn't just gone to David's place. Olivia, slightly tipsy, mentioned, our room's a bit messy, but this place is so clean and comfortable. Where was David? It seemed unusual for a new bride to be drinking alone in our house. I looked around, half expecting David to be hiding somewhere. Dave's been working late nights and feeling a bit lonely, Olivia explained, sensing my concern. I came downstairs to find Olivia with tears streaming down her face. Paul, his voice gentle, said, It's okay, Olivia. Talk to me if things get tough, as he patted her head reassuringly. Thank you, Paul, Olivia responded, her voice trembling. The scene felt surreal, like something out of a movie. I couldn't shake the odd, uncomfortable feeling that seemed to ripple through the room. Paul, Olivia is important to David. Maybe you should consider keeping a bit more distance, I suggested softly. Olivia, however, defended Paul with a smile. He's just worried about me, she said. I couldn't help but raise my voice in surprise. This was more than I expected, and I felt a wave of exhaustion from work wash over me. I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up, I said, longing for the solace of a warm bath. After soaking in the tub, surrounded by bubbles and the soothing scent of bath oil, I felt my mind drift far away. Once I emerged and dressed, I was surprised to find David, who was supposed to be driving home, already at the house, looking slightly tipsy. "David, weren't you supposed to drive home?" I asked, bewildered. He grinned, a bit unsteady. "Olivia suggested we have a drink together, and I got pulled in. I've decided to stay here tonight." "Hey, Mom, why not have a drink with your son? It's been a while," he said with enthusiasm. I felt uneasy with an unexpected overnight guest and Olivia's presence. I can drive you both home if you'd like," I offered, but David waved it off. "You must be tired too. It's fine, we'll stay here." Amidst the awkwardness, I heard laughter. Glancing at Olivia, I caught a momentary glimpse of her staring at me intently. Her gaze made me uneasy, leaving me to wonder if I had misunderstood the situation. I tried to reassure myself, but little did I know that Olivia's grand plan was already in motion. The next morning, she arrived at my house first thing, repeatedly apologizing for her behavior. Her reaction seemed a bit excessive, but I understood where she was coming from. When I told her it was all right, she left, looking visibly relieved. However, that night, to my surprise, Olivia was back at my house again. David was nowhere to be seen, and Olivia seemed different from before, which made me worry. "I'm sorry for coming again," she said, handing me a box of sweets. Paul also apologized, albeit sheepishly. "I might have been a bit overexcited yesterday. Sorry about that." I figured if this would help them bond, I should forgive them for now. Both Olivia and Paul thanked me sincerely, but just when I thought I could feel more mentally exhausted, a new twist awaited. One day, Paul approached me with a grim expression. "Can we talk?" he asked. I chose the living room as our spot to chat. While waiting, I was stunned to see David and Olivia walk in. My shock was evident as I greeted them with a confused "long time no see," but they only sat silently. The tense atmosphere hinted at some major news, making me increasingly anxious. Paul finally spoke, dropping a bombshell. "From now on, this house will belong to Olivia. If you can't accept that, we might have to reconsider our relationship." "Why are you saying this?" I asked, my voice a mix of shock and confusion. Before I could process what was happening, Olivia shouted, "You need to leave this house." I was utterly dumbfounded. "Hold on, explain yourself. What do you mean giving the house to Olivia?" Paul's cheeks flushed as he replied, "You've always caused trouble for Olivia. You should have thought about this before it got too late." I was at a loss for words, struggling to understand the sudden and harsh turn of events. I felt a deep sense of injustice. I hadn't done anything wrong, yet Paul seemed unconvinced. Olivia, tearfully, told them how much I had hurt her, recounting her pain. She stood next to Paul, visibly trying to hold back her tears. David looked at me with a disapproving gaze, saying, "I never imagined you'd do something like this, Mom. It's heartbreaking." Despite my attempts to explain, my words fell on deaf ears, and Olivia's tears continued to flow. Paul coldly announced, "That's why we decided to go our separate ways. The three of us will live in this house." His words felt remarkably heartless. "Why should I have to give my house to Olivia?" I asked, my confusion evident. Paul replied, "Olivia is deeply hurt. Demanding compensation is one way to address it, but I thought of a different approach. I know how much this house means to you, so by taking it, maybe you'll understand the impact of your behavior." I struggled to believe this was fair or true, as I had never been unkind to Olivia. Moreover, considering Olivia hadn't worked since getting married, a $3,000 monthly mortgage seemed unmanageable for her. When I pointed this out, Paul responded with a smile. "The mortgage will be transferred to David's name. Given his salary and position, the transition should be smooth." I asked, "Is it really that simple to transfer the mortgage?" Paul nodded, explaining, "Usually it's difficult, but David works at a reputable company, and I have connections at the bank where you have the mortgage. I'm confident it can be arranged." His assurances did little to ease my concerns. The atmosphere grew increasingly hostile, as if I was being forced to surrender my home. Despite repeating my stance, I couldn't understand why I was being blamed when I had done nothing to Olivia. I couldn't bear the thought of giving up my house. Paul and Olivia grew increasingly frustrated with my response, and the conversation felt unbearably tense. Olivia, who had been crying the whole time, finally spoke softly. "Kate, please understand. Think of the baby." She gently stroked her belly. David added, "It's true, Mom. Olivia is pregnant, and if she's under too much stress, it could harm the baby. You need to consider that. The revelation that Olivia was pregnant complicated things. No one wants to add stress during pregnancy, but being asked to surrender my home on such short notice was overwhelming. Give me a moment to think, I said, retreating to my room. Lying on my bed, I was lost in thought when I noticed a long strand of hair on the pillow. No one in my family had hair like this. My heart raced with the unsettling thought of an affair. This realization only added to my confusion and distress. I felt as if I were trapped in a nightmare, hoping to wake up and find everything back to normal. Tears streamed down my face as I drifted off to sleep, wishing this turmoil was just a bad dream. Late that night, I was jolted awake by voices coming from the living room, not David and Olivia, but a cheerful Paul and Olivia. Their conversation, filled with laughter and casual banter, felt completely out of place. I heard Olivia say, "Oh, I really wanted to drink wine." Paul replied, "Remember, you have a baby now." Their carefree chatter weighed heavily on me, and my heart sank further with Olivia's recent behavior. Then an unmistakable sound, a kiss, echoed through the house. Olivia murmured, "Oh, Paul, what if David or Kate sees us? It would be so embarrassing." My mind spun in disbelief. What were they doing? My stomach churned as I realized the depth of their betrayal. They were likely planning to enjoy themselves while I was out of the house. The thought was sickening. The long hair was definitely Olivia's, and without saying a word, I lay there listening to their conversation, feeling a wave of nausea. The idea of staying in a house that now felt tainted by their actions was unbearable. I no longer wanted a home that brought me such feelings. The next morning, I resolved that I needed to move on. I emerged in front of the three of them, rubbing my tired eyes. I hadn't slept well in that bed, but I kept that to myself. "Have you finally made up your mind?" they asked, their faces hopeful. "I've decided to give up the house," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Their expressions brightened immediately. "Great, let's move quickly with the ownership transfer. If the house is in my name, the mortgage inspection will be fine," David said excitedly. He seemed oblivious to the full extent of the situation. My heart ached for him, but I chose not to reveal the whole truth. He had always followed Olivia's lead, and I wasn't ready to shatter his trust in her. The next few days were a whirlwind of divorce proceedings and transferring home ownership. Finally, the paperwork was completed, and the house was officially under a new name. "There's no place for you here anymore," Paul said with a touch of sarcasm. "Grandma, it's time to leave." Olivia leaned in and whispered something into my ear. It stung a bit, but even without her comment, I was already resolved to leave. The house held countless memories, but given what had happened, I had no reason to stay. I knew my next actions would stir things up for this peculiar trio. The real drama was just beginning. A month passed, a time for me to gather my thoughts, and I found myself standing in front of that house again. I took a deep breath and hesitantly pressed the doorbell of the house I hadn't visited in so long. My heartbeat seemed to echo in the quiet. "Why are you here?" Paul's slightly annoyed voice reached my ears. It felt strange hearing his tone after so long. "Can we talk?" I asked, my voice tight with emotion. "Why should I let you in?" Paul acted as if I were a distant memory. "It involves Olivia," I said, knowing that mentioning her name would soften his stance. I didn't enjoy bringing her up, but I knew it would make an impact. "Oh, look who's here," Paul said sarcastically. His words were legally accurate but still painful. "What do you want?" everyone asked, their eyes filled with suspicion. I took a deep breath and pulled a photo from my pocket. "Can you take a look at this?" I asked, as all eyes turned to the image. The photo showed Paul and Olivia on a date, looking happy and intimate. After the divorce, I had hired a private detective to monitor them discreetly. It wasn't long before I received pictures of their outings. "What's this about?" David's face changed instantly upon seeing the photo. "Where was this taken?" Paul exclaimed, clearly in shock. "What's the big deal?" Olivia interjected defensively. "We're just father-in-law and daughter-in-law. We were just enjoying ourselves." I smirked and pulled out my smartphone. "Listen to this," I said, pressing play on a recording. Paul's voice came through clearly. "Olivia, I really love you," followed by Olivia's voice, hushed and anxious. "If you're too loud, someone will hear in the next room." The recording included sounds that resembled kisses. Paul and Olivia fell silent, their faces registering shock. Seizing the moment, I asked, "Olivia, whose child are you carrying?" David's expression turned to one of confusion and panic. Could it be my father's? He murmured. That's impossible, Olivia began, but her words faltered, catching in her throat. David's anger erupted, leading to a physical altercation with Paul. In the middle of their fight, Olivia cried out in pain, momentarily halting their clash. I seized that opportunity to speak. Haven't I always said I never bullied Olivia? I feel like she's hiding something from me. Maybe she's lying to David to get me out of the house. David looked utterly shocked by my accusation. I can't believe it, David said, his voice trembling with regret and disbelief. I feel so pathetic for doubting Mom. Why are you hiding? Tell me everything. His eyes burned with anger. For a moment, Paul and Olivia remained silent, their faces showing shock. David continued, there's so much evidence. We could even take this to court. The color drained from their faces as the gravity of the situation set in. Olivia began to speak through her tears. When David and I went on our first date, I really enjoyed it. But the first time I saw this house, I fell in love. My family home is so old, and I dreamed of living in a beautiful house like this. I got close to Paul for that reason. When we were introduced for marriage, I waited for Paul to return, and we had drinks alone. We became close, and it seems we planned to get you out of the house. Olivia's apologies were interspersed with tears. I'm so sorry. I got too greedy. I should have been honest from the start about wanting to live together. Her voice carried a hint of regret. In my family, my mom and grandma always argued. I was scared of living with a mother-in-law. This house is so beautiful and comfortable. I was hoping you'd leave. Her admission of the affair with her father-in-law was deeply unsettling. Paul took a deep breath, trying to explain. Every time I saw her smile, I knew she was using me, but the time we spent together felt so good. Still, it's unforgivable. David's response was brief but carried a heavy weight. His eyes were filled with betrayal, sadness, and anger. Both Paul and Olivia were left speechless, tears streaming down their faces. It was no surprise when David decided to divorce, and a DNA test later confirmed Paul was the father of the baby. I never thought this day would come, David murmured softly. I gently stroked his head, reflecting on how our family had changed because of Olivia. It seemed she hadn't fully grasped how her choices would impact her future. I had a feeling that, with time, my premonitions would come true. 2 years later, on a sunny day, Olivia remarried Paul and started a new life with him under the same roof. Their children went to a nearby daycare, and Olivia tried to make friends with other mothers, though she often felt isolated. Her family's resistance to her divorce from David and her remarriage to Paul had strained their relationship. Their anger towards Paul remained intense, and family gatherings were rare. Meanwhile, the big, beautiful house now quietly stood, occupied only by David. He found solace in the memories of the past and hopes for the future. I've thought about selling this house, but my mother grew up here. I can't easily part with such a cherished home, David said, looking into the distance. He had cleaned and sorted out everything Paul and Olivia had left behind. With a hint of embarrassment, he added, if I had known you'd go through all this trouble, I wouldn't have said anything. I know it's not right to blame them, but I'm sorry. I'm not sure if you can forgive me, but please feel free to visit the house once in a while. I'd like us to share more together. He handed me a voucher for a resort hotel. I was deeply moved by his warm gesture and nearly brought to tears. Though I couldn't forget everything immediately, I wanted to rebuild our relationship slowly over time.